Lena had always dreamed of working in space. Growing up on Earth, she would stare at the night sky, imagining what life might be like on other planets. She had studied alien languages and cultures for years, hoping that one day she would get a chance to make contact with extraterrestrial beings. Her dream finally came true when she was selected to test a new, state-of-the-art translation device designed to bridge the language gap between humans and alien species. The device, called the Universal Translator, was a breakthrough in technology. It could translate any language from Earth languages to the most complex alien dialects almost instantly. It was supposed to be the key to making peaceful contact with alien civilizations. The Galactic Council, the organization that oversaw all interspecies communication, had chosen Lena to be the first human to use the device in a real-life situation. She would be visiting the Zoraks, a species known for their towering height and transparent skin, which glowed faintly in the dark. Lena was nervous but excited. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. She had trained for this moment for years. But nothing could prepare her for what was about to happen. The journey to the Zorak homeworld was long, and as the shuttle entered their atmosphere, Lena felt her heart race. She checked the device one last time to make sure it was working properly. The screen blinked green, confirming the translator was functioning. She took a deep breath and prepared herself for the meeting. As the shuttle touched down on the Zorak planet, Lena was escorted by 2 Zorak representatives to the council hall. The building was unlike anything she had ever seen, tall, with smooth, shimmering walls that seemed to hum with an energy all their own. Inside, the atmosphere was peaceful, filled with the scent of strange, fragrant plants that Lena had never encountered. Her eyes widened as she looked around. The Zoraks had gathered in the hall, and they were waiting for her arrival. She could feel their eyes on her, their unblinking stares, a little intimidating. The Zorak leader, a towering figure named Zora Kral, stepped forward to greet her. His skin shimmered in the light, making him look almost otherworldly. Spoke in a deep, melodic voice, but Lena couldn't understand a word. That's when she activated the translator. It worked perfectly at first, translating his greeting into clear English. She smiled, relieved, and greeted him back. The conversation began, but as they spoke, Lena noticed something strange. The translator seemed to be struggling. The words weren't coming through as smoothly as before. Lena tried to ignore the growing sense of unease. She focused on Zora Kral's words, trying her best to keep up. He spoke about the history of his people and their customs, their peaceful ways of life, and their desire to form an alliance with Earth. Lena nodded along, trying to be as polite as possible, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The translator sputtered again, and this time, Lena felt a strange chill run down her spine. When she spoke, the device's translation came out garbled, as if the words had been mixed up. She repeated herself, trying to correct the mistake. But the translation kept failing. The Zoraks began to murmur among themselves, their eyes narrowing as Lena stumbled over her words. She felt the weight of their stares, and her heart started to race. This wasn't supposed to happen. The device was supposed to work perfectly, but it wasn't. And now, she was on the verge of making a terrible mistake. Zora Kral stepped forward. Again, and this time his words sounded different. The translator translated them into something Lena could understand. But the meaning was all wrong. Instead of a diplomatic greeting, his words were now a strange, formal invitation. You're welcome. You two are sacred ceremony, the device translated. Lena blinked, confused. A ceremony? She wasn't prepared for anything like that. Before she could ask what he meant, the Zorak leader made a gesture. A moment later, a group of Zorak attendants arrived, bringing with them a ceremonial robe. They placed it over Lena's shoulders and guided her toward the center of the room. Lena's mind raced as she tried to process what was happening. The translation device was still malfunctioning, and now she was being led to a ceremonial platform. This wasn't part of the plan. She was supposed to be here for a peaceful discussion, not some kind of ritual. She tried to speak, to explain that this wasn't what she had come for, but her words were lost in the device's failure. She gestured to the attendants, but they only smiled and ushered her forward. Lena felt trapped. She could see Zorakral smiling, but there was something in his expression that made her uneasy. She couldn't tell if he was pleased with the ceremony or if he was confused by her reaction. The attendants began to chant in unison, their voices low and rhythmic, as Lena stood in the center of the room, surrounded by Zoracs. She could feel the heat of the room rising, and her hands started to sweat. The ceremony seemed to be growing more intense with each passing moment, and Lena was growing more and more uncomfortable. What had gone wrong? Why had the device failed at such a critical moment? As the chanting grew louder, Lena's panic set in. She had no idea what the ceremony was for, but it was clear that this was no ordinary greeting, and yet she couldn't stop it. The Zoracs seemed to be waiting for something from her in acknowledgement, a response, anything. She tried to speak again, but the translator was completely offline. She was powerless to communicate. Just when Lena thought things couldn't get any worse, she felt a soft touch on her shoulder. She turned to find one of the Zorac attendants standing behind her, holding a strange object. The attendant whispered something in her ear, but of course, Lena couldn't understand. The translator was still dead, and the weight of the situation began to sink in. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a full-blown cultural disaster. Lena had no way to fix it. The Zoracs were waiting for her response, and Lena had no idea what to say. Lena's heart was pounding in her chest as she stood in the center of the ceremonial platform. The Zorak leader, Zorakral, stood before her with a smile on his glowing face. He seemed pleased, but Lena had no idea why. Her mind was racing, trying to understand what was happening. Had the translation device failed her? Why had it turned what should have been a diplomatic meeting into this confusing mess? As the chanting continued, the Zorak attendants moved closer, surrounding Lena with their calm, purposeful movements. She could see their eyes, almost glowing with intensity, watching her every move. Lena couldn't shake the feeling that she was caught in a trap, unable to escape. Her attempts to speak were useless. As the translator was still malfunctioning, Zuda Corral stepped forward, and his voice rang out again. This time, his words were slower, more deliberate. Lena could almost catch the meaning, but it was still unclear. The device was not working as expected. She realized that her only hope now was to get through this without making things worse. But she couldn't help feeling a deep sense of panic. Why am I here? Lena thought, staring at Zorakral. But no words came out of her mouth. A Zorak attendant placed a soft, heavy object around her neck. It was a necklace, made of a glowing material that Lena had never seen before. The moment the necklace touched her skin, she felt a strange warmth spread through her. It was as if the very air in the room had shifted. Lena's mind was clouded with confusion, and she couldn't tell if the necklace was part of some sort of ritual or if it was just another misunderstanding caused by the malfunctioning device. Zorakral spoke again, and this time the translation device seemed to stumble less. You are now part of the bond, the device finally translated, though the words sounded odd, almost disconnected. Your union with us is now complete. Lena's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. This wasn't just a greeting. This was a bonding ceremony. Zoracs believed she had chosen to become part of their sacred union, and now there was no turning back. Her heart raced as she looked around the room at the other Zoracs, who all watched her expectantly. No, this is all wrong, Lena thought desperately. This isn't what I meant. I didn't mean any of this. But her thoughts were lost. In the chaos of the situation, she was trapped in a cultural misunderstanding that was spiraling out of control. Her mind raced, trying to think of a way to correct the mistake, but she couldn't find the right words. The translator had failed her at the worst possible moment. The Zoracs, on the other hand, didn't seem to notice anything wrong. They believed the ceremony was going exactly as it should. Zorakral raised his hands, and the Zorak attendant stepped forward, taking Lena by the hands and leading her to the center of the room. Lena felt the weight of the situation press down on her. She had no idea what they expected from her now. What was she supposed to do in this strange, alien ritual? Lena was powerless to stop the ceremony. The Zoracs had their own way of doing things, and it was clear that her attempt to communicate had already failed. She didn't know if there was a way out. Her thoughts were clouded, and the only thing she could do was follow their lead. The Zorax led her to a stone pedestal in the middle of the room, which had strange carvings on it. The room grew quiet, as they stood around her in a circle, awaiting her next move. It was in that silence that Lena realized just how serious this misunderstanding had become. She could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on her. The Zorax were a proud and ancient species, and the bond they believed they had formed with her was sacred to them. She couldn't just walk away from it, and she couldn't find the right words to explain what had happened. Please, just let me explain, Lena thought, but she could only shake her head in frustration as her mind raced. Sora Corral stepped forward and placed a hand on Lena's shoulder, guiding her to stand still. He smiled warmly, as if the ceremony was a beautiful and sacred moment. The warmth from the necklace around Lena's neck seemed to grow stronger, and she felt a strange sense of connection to the Zorak people, even though she didn't understand how it had happened. One of the attendants raised a strange object in the Era staff, glowing with the same light as the necklace. It was then that Lena realized just how serious this was. Zorax believed that she had participated in their ceremony willingly, and they were preparing to finalize the bond. The translator device sputtered again, and Lena's heart sank as she heard the words, "Your bond is now eternal. You are now one of us." Lena wanted to scream, but instead she stood frozen. The weight of the necklace around her neck felt heavy, and she felt trapped in this alien world, unable to break free from the misunderstanding. It was as if she had walked into a situation she didn't understand, and now she was caught in the web of their customs. She could feel her anxiety rising as the Zorax began chanting again. The air around her seemed to shimmer, and the ground beneath her feet felt strangely warm. She could hear the sound of the chants, their voices rising and falling in rhythm. The sound was mesmerizing, but it only served to heighten Lena's panic. Zor stepped forward once more, his voice low and solemn as he spoke, but Lena could barely hear his words over the pounding of her own heart. The chants echoed in her mind, and she felt dizzy from the overwhelming sense of being caught in something she didn't understand, just as Lena thought she couldn't take it anymore. The Zorak leader's voice broke through the chanting. His words, though translated by the device, felt like a weight on her chest. "You are now ours, Lena of Earth," he said softly. Lena's mind spun. She was part of something she never asked for, and it seemed like there was no way out. Had no way to explain herself. She had no way to undo what had been done. The Zorax had mistaken her for a willing participant in their sacred ceremony, and now she was bound to them in a way she didn't understand. But there had to be a way out. There had to be a way to fix this. Lena stood frozen in the middle of the ceremony. The weight of the glowing necklace around her neck felt suffocating, and she could feel her palms growing clammy with sweat. The Zorax, with their towering presence, surrounded her, their eyes fixed on her with an intensity she couldn't escape. The chanting had stopped, and the room was quiet now, except for the soft hum of the Zorak leader's voice. "You are now one of us." Zora Kral's words echoed in Lena's mind, but they sounded like a distant, terrible dream. She wanted to shout, to explain that this wasn't what she had intended, but every attempt to speak was blocked by the malfunctioning translator. Her voice was trapped, and there was nothing she could do to stop the ritual that had already begun. Lena's heart raced as she struggled to make sense of the situation. She had come here to build peace, to be a representative of humanity, but now she found herself part of something she didn't understand. She had never imagined that a simple translation error would lead her to this moment, the Zorax believed. They had formed a bond with her, a bond that was sacred to them. The ceremony, meant to symbolize unity and peace, was not something Lena had been prepared for. She was caught in the midst of a cultural misunderstanding that she could neither explain nor undo. The Zorax looked at her with such pride, as if she were the most important person in the room, but to her, everything felt wrong. She wasn't ready for this kind of connection, especially not with a species she had just met. Lena's mind raced as she tried to think of a way to break free. She had to do something, anything, to make them understand. but no words would come. Her throat felt tight, as if the weight of the ceremony had literally silenced her. She could see the Zoracs waiting for her response, expecting her to accept their offer of union, but she was too afraid to speak. Her entire body was frozen in place. The Zorak leader, Zora Kral, took a step closer, his glowing eyes locked on Lena's. He smiled gently, but the smile only deepened Lena's anxiety. Could feel the tension in the room, thick and heavy. The other Zoracs stood silently, their gaze never leaving her. It was clear they were waiting for her to respond to the ceremony, to accept the bond they had created between them. "Please, Lena," Zora Kral said softly, his voice a low, melodic hum. "Join us. Be one with us. Your presence is now a part of our sacred circle." Lena wanted to scream, to tell them that she didn't understand, that this was all a mistake. But the words wouldn't come. The translator was still malfunctioning, and it seemed like there was no way out of the situation. She could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on her. The bond, whatever it was, had already been formed in their eyes. To refuse now would be an insult, rejection of their culture and their beliefs. Her mind raced through every possible option. She could try to explain with gestures, but what if they didn't understand? What if her actions only made the situation worse? She could try to escape, but where would she go? The Zoracs were everywhere, surrounding her. She couldn't run. She couldn't hide. Suddenly, one of the Zorak attendants stepped forward, holding a small, glowing orb in her hands. Orb pulsed with a soft, warm light, and the attendant placed it gently in Lena's hands. The moment the orb touched her skin, Lena felt a wave of warmth flood through her. It was calming, soothing even. But at the same time, it only deepened her sense of unease. The warmth from the orb seemed to connect her to the room, to the Zoracs. Around her, it was as if their energy was flowing into her. She had no way to stop it. Lena stared at the orb in her hands, her mind spinning. This was it. Bond was happening, and there was no way to undo it now. She had been drawn into something far beyond her control. The Zoracs had believed her actions were a sign of agreement, a sign that she was willing to join them in their sacred ceremony. And now she had become a part of their ritual, whether she wanted to or not. Her breathing quickened as the reality of the situation set in. There was no way to explain the mistake. There was no way to reverse the ceremony. Zoracs would not understand that she had not meant to form this bond with them. They had seen her gesture, her actions as acceptance. And in their culture, that was all that mattered. They did not see the failure of the translator. They only saw what they had interpreted, a bond between their species and hers. As the Zoracs began to chant again, the orb in Lena's hands pulsed brighter, and she felt a strange energy surge through her body. The light from the orb seemed to travel through her veins, filling her with a warmth she couldn't explain. It was like their bond was now a part of her, as if she had somehow been marked by it. She could feel the Zoracs' energy around her, their presence in her mind. It was both overwhelming and terrifying. Zora Kral stepped forward once more, his eyes full of hope. "You are now one of us, Lena. The bond is complete." Lena wanted to collapse, to break down and cry, but she couldn't. The Zoracs were watching her, waiting for her to confirm what they already believed. She felt trapped in a web of cultural misunderstandings, her actions misinterpreted in a way that had led to this moment. She had become part of something she didn't understand. Now she didn't know how to escape it. The chanting grew louder. Lena could feel herself being pulled into the ceremony, pulled deeper into the bond that had been created between them. She had no way out. She had no words to fix what had happened. All she could do was stand there holding the orb, feeling the energy of the Zoracs flow through her. In that moment, Lena realized that her mission to build peace had taken an unexpected turn. Instead of being a symbol of unity, she had become a part of something far more complicated and dangerous. She had no choice but to follow the path that had been set for her, hope that somehow she could find a way to fix the mess she had accidentally created. Lena stood motionless in the center of the room, her hands still clutching the glowing orb. The weight of the necklace around her neck seemed to increase with each passing moment, pressing against her like an anchor. The Zoracs, their eyes full of anticipation, waited for her to speak. to acknowledge the bond they believed she had willingly formed. But Lena knew that no matter what she said, no matter what she did, the situation was far from normal. She had come here with a mission to build peace, but now she found herself trapped in an alien ritual she couldn't understand. The translation device, which was supposed to help her communicate, had failed her at the worst possible time. She had no way of explaining the mistake, and now she was caught in a ceremony she never intended to be a part of. Lena's heart raced as she scanned the room. The Zoracs stood silently, waiting for her to respond. Their faces, though calm, were full of expectation. They had no idea that she had not consented to this ritual. To them, the bond was already complete. To them, she was now one of them. In their culture, there was no turning back. Desperation clawed at Lena's chest. She had to get out of this situation. She had to fix the mistake before it was too late. She couldn't stay here, pretending to be part of a tradition she didn't understand. But how? How could she escape without offending them, without causing an international incident? For a moment, Lena considered running. But where could she go? The Zorak palace was vast, and she was surrounded by these towering beings who seemed to be everywhere. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden movement from Zorak Rao. He stepped forward, his eyes locked on her with a soft, almost caring expression. "You are now one with us," Zorak Rao repeated, his voice gentle but firm. "The bond is eternal. There is no need for words. We have accepted you, Lena of Earth." Lena's stomach churned. She had no choice but to accept that this was not something that could be undone with a simple apology or a few kind words. She was trapped in a situation that she had never expected. The Zoracs had accepted her into their fold, and she couldn't just walk away. She could feel their eyes on her, the weight of their expectations pressing down on her. But there had to be a way out. There had to be a way to fix this. As Zorak Rao continued to speak, Lena's mind raced. She tried to think of a solution, a way to escape this strange ceremony without offending the Zoracs. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she felt a cold sweat break out across her forehead. Every instinct told her to run, but she knew that would only make things worse. She couldn't run from this. Then, an idea began to form in Lena's mind. She remembered something that Zorokral had said earlier about the Zorak people's customs. She remembered that they valued strength, and that their bonds were not just spiritual, but also physical. Perhaps, she thought, if she showed them her strength, if she proved that she was capable of standing on her own, they would understand that she wasn't bound by their customs in the same way they were. It was a long shot, but it was the only option she had left. Lena took a deep breath and stepped forward, trying to stand tall despite the overwhelming pressure. She knew that if she showed weakness now, it would only strengthen the Zoracs' belief that she was a willing participant. But if she could show them that she was strong, that she could handle the situation on her own terms, maybe they would understand that she wasn't part of their bond in the way they thought. The Zorakral's eyes followed her every move as she walked toward the edge of the platform. The room was silent, the only sound the soft hum of the energy in the walls. Lena's heart pounded as she continued her slow walk, her mind racing. She had no plan beyond this moment. She didn't know what would happen next, but she had to act before it was too late. When Lena reached the edge of the platform, she turned and faced the Zoracs. She took a deep breath and raised the orb high above her head, holding it out for them to see. The light from the orb seemed to pulse as she held it, casting strange shadows across the room. For a moment, the Zoracs stood completely still, there, eyes locked on the orb. "I am not one of you," Lena said firmly, her voice carrying across the silent room. The words came out more forcefully than she had intended, but they were the words she needed to say. "I am not here to be part of your bond. I am here to learn, to understand your culture. But this is not what I came for." For a moment, the room was still. The Zoracs didn't move, didn't speak. They just watched her, their faces unreadable. Lena's heart thudded in her chest as she waited for their reaction. Had she made a mistake? Had she pushed them too far? Finally, Zorakral stepped forward. His eyes softened, and he looked at Lena with a mixture of confusion and understanding. You do not wish to be one of us? He asked, his voice quiet, almost sorrowful. Lena nodded, the weight of her words settling heavily on her shoulders. No, I do not. I came here to learn about your people, not to join your customs. I respect your traditions, but this was not my choice. The room was silent again as the Zoracs exchanged glances. Lena held her breath, unsure of what they would do. Would they accept her words? Would they see it as a rejection? An insult to their culture? Zorakral's expression softened further, and he stepped closer. You have shown strength, Lena of Earth, he said, his voice gentle. We did not understand, but now we see. You are not part of our bond, but you are welcome here, as a guest, as a representative of your people. We will respect your wishes. Lena exhaled a sigh of relief, but the tension in her shoulders remained. She had made it through this stage, but she knew that the situation wasn't over. There were still misunderstandings to be fixed, and she still had to find a way to communicate properly with the Zoracs. But for now, she had taken the first step toward escaping the trap they had unknowingly set for her. She had not given up. She would not let this ceremony, this misunderstanding, define her mission. Lena stood before the Zorac Council, feeling the weight of their collective gaze on her. The tension in the room was palpable, but for the first time since the ceremony had begun, she felt a flicker of hope. She had taken a risk by speaking out, by telling them that she was not part of their bond, but she could see the understanding starting to form on their faces. They were listening. She was not entirely trapped anymore. Zorakral, the leader of the Zorac people, stood in front of her, his tall, imposing figure still radiating authority. His glowing skin shimmered in the soft light of the room, and his large eyes were filled with curiosity and, surprisingly, respect. He had always been a strong leader, commanding loyalty from his people, but now there was something different in his expressions, something that suggested he was beginning to understand her confusion, even if he didn't fully grasp the depth of the misunderstanding. Lena could feel the unease still hanging in the air. The Zoracs, who had once welcomed her as a bonded member of their community, were now looking to her for clarity. They had not rejected her, but neither had they fully accepted what she had said. They wanted to know the truth. I did not come here to join your ceremony, Lena said again, trying to keep her voice steady. I came here to learn, to represent my people. My presence here was a mistake, but not in the way you think. Did not mean to offend your culture. Zorakral's eyes softened as he listened to her. He was clearly trying to understand, but the cultural differences were still a barrier. To the Zoracs, a bond was sacred, and Lena's involvement in their ceremony had been seen as a commitment. Breaking that bond, even if it was accidental, was not something they took lightly. The room remained silent for a moment as the Zorac council members exchanged glances. It was clear they were processing her words, weighing the significance of what had happened. Lena held her breath, waiting for their response. She had tried to explain herself as best as she could, but now the fate of her mission hung in the balance. Finally, one of the council members, a Zorac elder with deep wrinkles on his face, stepped forward. His voice was soft, but firm. Lena of Earth, he said, his tone carrying the weight of centuries of tradition. The ceremony you took part in was not just a greeting. It is a powerful symbol of trust, of unity between our people. We do not take such matters lightly. Lena nodded, understanding the gravity of what he was saying. She had read about the Zoracs' customs before arriving, but nothing had prepared her for the intensity of their ceremonies. The bond they had created, even if it was unintentional, was something they saw as permanent. And now, she had to find a way to make them see that her involvement was a mistake. Not a deliberate choice. I understand, Lena said softly. But please believe me when I say that this was not my intention. The translator failed me, and I did not understand what was happening. I thought I was here to speak with you, to learn from you, not to be bound by your customs. The elder, Zorac, looked at her with deep, thoughtful eyes. After a long pause, he turned to Zorakral and whispered something Lena couldn't hear. The two leaders spoke quietly for a moment, and Lena felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What were they saying? Were they going to reject her completely? Would they see her as an outsider, forever trapped by the mistake of the malfunctioning? Translator. Zorakral finally turned back to Lena, his face calm but serious. "We understand your words, Lena of Earth," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "The bond you entered into, while unintentional, has caused confusion. We, too, have made mistakes. But there is one thing that we value above all else in our people: the truth." Lena's heart skipped a beat. The truth. Was this the moment when the Zoracs would finally accept her explanation? Or was this just another part of their ceremony? "You must know your intentions, Lena," Zorakral continued. "We must know if you truly wish to break the bond you did not choose. It's you. We will respect your decision. But understand that it will take time. The bond is not easily broken." Lena felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was the opportunity she had been hoping for. The Zoracs were giving her a chance to explain herself fully, to make them understand that this entire situation was a misunderstanding. But it wouldn't be easy. Breaking the bond would mean challenging centuries of tradition. That was no small task. "I understand," Lena said, her voice steady now. "I do not want to disrespect your traditions. I just want to make it clear that this was a mistake. I came here to learn about your people, not to become a part of your customs. I will do whatever it takes to make amends, but I need your understanding." Zorakral looked at her for a long moment, his eyes thoughtful. The room was silent as the council members waited for his decision. Lena could feel the weight of their gaze on her, and she could sense the growing tension. Would they accept her words, or would they see her as an outsider forever? Finally, Zorakral nodded, his expression softening. "We will honor your wishes, Lena of Earth," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "The bond may be strong, but it is not unbreakable. If you truly wish to end it, we will respect your decision. It will not be easy, but it is possible." Lena's breath caught in her throat. Oh, this was it. She had been given a chance to fix her mistake. The Zoracs were not rejecting her, but they were not accepting her fully either. There would be a process, a period of time, where she would have to prove her intentions and earn their trust. "We will allow you to leave this ceremony," Zorakral said, his voice steady. "But you must return to us and prove that you understand the gravity of what has happened. You must show us that you are here to learn, not to take part in our customs." Lena nodded, relieved but also aware of the challenge ahead. She had been given a chance to correct the mistake, but it wouldn't be easy. The Zoracs would expect her to prove herself, to show them that she truly respected their traditions, and she would do whatever it took to make things right. "I will return," Lena said firmly, "and I will prove that I came here to learn, to build peace, not to be bound by your customs." Zorakral smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Look forward to seeing you again, Lena of Earth. May the truth guide you." As the ceremony ended, Lena left the room with a sense of purpose. She had taken the first step toward mending the misunderstandings, but the road ahead would be difficult. The Zoracs had shown her a path forward, but it was up to her to prove that she could walk it. Lena walked out of the Zorac Council Hall, her mind still racing from the events that had unfolded. The ceremony was over, but the weight of what had just happened was far from lifted. She had been given a chance to explain herself, to make things right, but the process was far from over. She had to prove herself to the Zoracs, and that would not be easy. The Zoracs had agreed to respect her wishes and allow her to leave the ceremony, but in doing so, they had given her a responsibility she hadn't expected. They wanted her to return, to show them that her intentions were genuine. They wanted to see that she respected their culture and traditions, even if she hadn't chosen to be a part of them. Lena's heart still raced as she walked through the Zorac Palace. The hallways were quiet now, and the soft glow of the walls cast long shadows. She had to think, to plan. The Zoracs had given her a chance, but it was up to her to make the most of it. She couldn't afford to fail. Not now, not after everything she had been through. As Lena made her way to her room, she thought about the Zorac leader, Zorakral. His eyes had softened when he spoke to her, but she could still sense the authority in his voice. He was a strong leader, and the Zoracs followed him with unwavering loyalty. They had seen her as part of their bond, and now they were willing to allow her to break free from it. But it wasn't a simple task. She would have to earn their trust, to prove that she had not come to manipulate their customs, but to learn from them. Lena sat down on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling. She had never felt so alone in her life. She had been sent here to build peace, to form alliances. But now she was caught in the middle of a cultural misunderstanding that seemed impossible to fix. She had to find a way to make the Zoracs understand that she wasn't here to take anything from them. She was here to learn. The next morning, Lena was summoned back to the council hall. She entered. The atmosphere was different. The Zoracs were gathered, but this time there was no ceremony, no chanting. It was quiet, almost somber. Zorakral stood at the front, his eyes fixed on her. "You have returned," he said, his voice calm but serious. "The bond we believed we shared has been broken, but we still wish to know you, Lena of Earth. You must show us that your intentions are true." Lena nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. This was her chance to prove that she wasn't the enemy, that she wasn't here to take advantage of their culture. She had to make them see that she was genuine in her desire for peace. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed to show them that her people were capable of understanding and respecting theirs. "I understand the importance of this moment," Lena began, her voice steady despite the nerves in her chest. "I have learned so much from you already. But I know that I still have a long way to go. I came here to build a relationship between our people, not to break your trust. I will prove that I respect your customs and that I want to learn from." Uzurokral nodded, but his expression remained serious. "Your words are important, Lena of Earth, but words alone are not enough. You must show us. You must prove that you understand our ways and that you will not dishonor the bond that was created even if it was unintentional." Lena nodded again. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't just say the right things. She had to live them. The Zoracs were testing her, and she had no choice but to rise to the challenge. Over the next few days, Lena immersed herself in the Zorac culture. She spent time with the council, learning about their customs and beliefs. She participated in their daily rituals, observing their way of life, and trying to understand their values. It was difficult at first. The language barrier was still a challenge, and the customs were so different from anything she had known. But she was determined to make it work. One morning, Lena was invited to a gathering of the Zorac people. It was a peaceful event, one that celebrated their history and culture. The Zoracs spoke of their ancestors and the traditions that had been passed down through generations. Lena listened intently, trying to absorb every word, every gesture. She wanted to understand them fully, to show them that she was not just a visitor, but a student. During the gathering, Zorakral turned to her and spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. "You have shown respect, Lena of Earth. You have listened to our stories and learned our ways. But there is one more thing you must understand." Lena looked at him, her heart in her throat. "What is it?" she asked softly. "The bond we share is not just about customs or rituals," Zorakral said. "It's about trust, and trust is built over time. You must prove that you are not here for your own gain, but for the good of both our peoples." Lena nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had known this all along, but hearing it from him made it all the more real. Trust was the key to everything. If the Zoracs didn't trust her, nothing would work. She had to earn that trust, no matter how long it took. "I understand," Lena said, her voice firm, "and I will do everything I can to earn your trust, to prove that I am here to build peace, not to take advantage of your culture." Zorakral studied her for a long moment, his eyes sharp and perceptive. Then, slowly, he nodded. Beginning to understand Lena of Earth, the bond is not just about being accepted. It is about becoming part of something greater. You are on the right path. Lena felt a sense of relief wash over her, but she knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead was still uncertain, and the challenges were far from over. But for the first time since she had arrived, Lena felt that she was moving in the right direction. She had shown the Zoracs that she respected their culture, that she was willing to learn, and that she was genuinely committed to building a peaceful relationship between their people and hers. She wasn't out of the woods yet, but she had taken the first step toward earning their trust. And that, she knew, was the most important thing.